Lovely. Okay, so
Do you know the year of it, possibly?
Kevin, Jim, Grace. Lauren, Ryan. All right. So thank you. Good morning. We are in order. And according to the agenda that I had set, our first item of business is to get an updated take on what the open meeting law means to our committee. I'd like to introduce Deputy Secretary of State Lauren Hibbert, who can give us the rundown. Thank you for joining us this morning, ma'am, and please continue.
I'm happy to join you. Thank you so much. My name is Lauren Hibbert. And I don't have a list of questions from you folks, so I'm happy to provide an overview of what S55 did to the open meeting law and also what our office did. Actually, I'll start there. So our office was asked whether or not this working group is covered by the open meeting law. It was a matter that was unclear in many ways, that would have been more clear had you had a state partner as one of the members. If you had had a state partner as one of the members in your working group, then the Attorney General's office has already opined that you would need to follow open meeting law. For instance, our office has two legislative working groups that we are responsible for. We're either the chair or the primary, we're in the driver's seat for both of them, actually. And it's very clear that we need to comply with open meeting law. What is less clear is when the legislature creates a working group and there is not a state partner in the working group. And that is why we asked for an opinion from the Attorney General's office. And they have opined. I hope the majority of you have seen that, but they do think you need to follow open meeting law because you were created by the legislature and are not expressly exempt like advisors to the governor. So with that analysis, I think I want to make sure that the Secretary of State's office is available to you to help with compliance to open meeting law as best we can, and will not becoming part of this working group because I think it's very weighty and I don't want to be part of it. So thank you. But and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about open meeting, since many of you are individuals who may not have to comply with open meeting every day.
Okay, Kevin, go ahead.
I'm interested. We had created some sub-working groups to meet and then report back to the main group, which I understand now has to comply with open meeting. Do those subgroups have to? Because otherwise we're sort of paralyzed. We're just arguing about the shape of the table.
Yeah. Yes, the subgroups should comply with open meeting law.
So is there any minimum amount of participation in a subgroup that would take us out of that?
No. No, and I mean, it doesn't mean that. It means that you just have to tell people when you're meeting and provide digital access.
So who do we tell?
You would put that on your agenda.
Part of the problem is that our chair here, our host, he knows how to do all that. And I think Grace does, but I don't think that's fair to just, foist it on her all the time. But when you say post to who?
Well, so I noticed that you're putting your agendas on the library system, which is great. And so what you would want to do is make sure that those subcommittee meetings, when they were occurring and how to join, were in that agenda.
So I have posted on the Department of Library's website, and I'll continue to do that. And between Chris and myself, we will gladly set up any Zoom needed for your subcommittee working groups. So while I agree, Kevin, many people do not have this expertise, but we shall be glad to set it up and be helpful to the committee as a whole.
Lauren, can I just ask, is there like a one-pager cheat sheet that we can look at that just gives us the quick and dirty guidelines for open meeting that we need to comply with?
Yes, I'm gonna put 2 links in this chat. It's not a one pager. I'm really sorry to say
That's fine.
it's a 15 pager.
Well, that's not so good.
I think we all can understand the challenges of explaining something that's fairly complicated without in a discreet and concise manner, but I agree with you, it's not good. I wish that I had a better one-page document for you. But I just put our guide to open meetings in the chat. And we published with the League of Cities and Towns and the School Board Association questions, answers to questions that we all worked on collaboratively with the change in the law. So I just put both of those, neither one of which is particularly brief. The first is 15 pages and the second is 11.
So Lauren, I assume that we would be considered an advisory board?
You are an advisory board under the new legislation, so yes.
And do we have, I'm actually not all that familiar with open meeting laws. You know, I work for a nonprofit. I don't work for for a government entity. I'm wondering if we have any requirements around minutes and posting minutes.
Yes, you do have requirement. Even before the law, even before the distinction between decision making and advisory, you as a body that is subject to open meeting, you do have to have minutes, and you need to post your unapproved minutes and then your approved minutes.
Lauren, let's say that we've warned a subcommittee meeting, and in preparation for that, people want to send their, what we're going to discuss. I mean, just a little blurb about my feelings about this or Grace's feelings about that. Can we do that?
No.
Outside of the meeting? So we have to show up at the meeting and no one's seen anything that anyone's done?
Yeah. So this is really tricky, right? I mean, think about it from someone who wants to participate and wants to be part of the discussion. So if you are exchanging emails and saying, Kevin, I like that idea. And Grace is then like, but have you thought about this idea? And Ryan's like, and I also had this idea. Then basically the conversation, I don't know if you folks are on the same subcommittee. You guys are the people that are close to each other on my screen. But essentially then you're having the meeting outside of the meeting. And the goal of open meeting is to have the meeting in the public, in the sunshine. So you can exchange materials, but you really should avoid having substantial discussion or debate. And then in the meeting, you should have the discussion about the materials that were shared in the open so that the public knows what folks are contemplating.
So I could send to Grace, this is my proposal on this. We'll discuss it at the meeting.
Yeah. That's a very gray area, but I think, yes, you can do that.
We have done things like that within Wyndham Regional Commission, which is one of the bodies I'm involved with. So what normally happens is someone will send information out, but we tell people do not reply, or if there's an issue, and you need to contact the chair, do not reply to all. The only thing you should be doing in that direction is to set up a schedule for a meeting or tell people that you will or will not be attending. Now, I can say this both as a member of Wyndham Regional, a town clerk, and I remind the committee that I have 51 years of radio experience, and I'm a member of the Vermont Association of Broadcasters Hall of Fame. So I've covered and even slept through many a local meeting down in southeastern Vermont.
Lauren, can you speak to the subcommittee? So there's only 9 members to the group. There could be a subcommittee where you have 5 people on it. There could be a subcommittee where you have 3 people on it. Does that follow the same minimum quorum, if you will, to have the meeting?
Yes.
Okay. And if you don't have the quorum, you can't have the meeting, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, no, you can have the meeting. You can't make decisions, which I think is there can't be motions made and decisions made, which is an interesting thing because you're advisory on whole. So I think you can still have discussions, but what you cannot do is someone can't make a motion and approve it without a quorum.
Okay, so just want to give you an example. 5 people on a subcommittee.
Yep.
3 of them say they're able to show up, so that would constitute
That's a quorum.
Our ability to go for them. It's a quorum. Under that scenario, we can discuss, make decisions, motions, etc.
Under that scenario, you could do anything you wanted.
Yep.
You have a quorum.
But last minute, the third person says, "Oh, I can't make it." The other 2 are waiting online, so they could still meet, but they just can't make any motions, discussion, or make any decisions, excuse me.
Decisions, yes. They can have discussion, but
Okay.
they cannot make decisions.
All right.
But I think it's an interesting question for this body on whole, what decisions you're making. I think when you're finalizing your recommendations to put in the report, that's probably the closest to the decisions that you're making. And again, we're not the enforcers of open meeting law. The Attorney General's office is. It's not like there's a roving band of enforcers out there to look for violations, right? But what happens is the public might notice and might become aggrieved. So my best advice to you would be that when it looks and feels like this body is making a decision, you ensure you have a quorum. And when it looks and feels like you're making a decision, you formalize the process, meaning someone makes a motion, there's approvals and disapprovals, and it's noted in your minutes. So that someone knows who didn't come to the meeting, this was the decision they made. So I'm going to just take something totally off the wall. This fall season, the state of Vermont should not sell any apples. That's my motion. I don't know where I just came from that motion, where that motion just came, but that's my motion. No apple selling in the state of Vermont. And that should be, Lauren Hibbert made a motion. There shall be no apple selling in the state of Vermont. Of course, everyone's going to vote against me, except for maybe I'll get Tim to assent. So Tim should be noted in the minutes as agreeing with my motion, and the rest should be noted as disagreeing, and the motion fails. And all of those, my motion should be in the minutes, how the votes happen should be in the minutes, and then the outcome of the motion should be in the minutes. And that just really formalizes something. And, there's not strict rules about this, but that's best practices that we advise people on, because then people can't criticize you either to you or to the media or to anybody else that you're not following best practices or what's anticipated.
So Lauren, aside from the agenda and discussion topics and any details about any motions, are there any other specific requirements around what has to be reflected in the minutes?
No. How to join, we recommend putting, sorry, that's in the agenda. I would put how to join in the agenda for the meeting. just like you would put where the meeting was going to be if you had a physical location. But no, the minutes need to reflect the topics that were discussed and decisions that were made and who was in the meeting.
So obviously, we're going to do our best
Yeah.
to comply with the open meeting regulations. But you made a comment that I'm interested in if you could just share some additional thoughts. So an aggrieved individual
Yes.
who raises a concern, does the statute speak to what our liabilities are as individuals for not complying?
What your personal liabilities are?
Explicitly or not explicitly. In other words, inadvertently we make a mistake. It's not intentional. Maybe we didn't even know we made the mistake.
Yeah.
How does the statute speak to our liability as individuals on this group if we make a mistake and don't comply with the statute?
The statute is silent as to individual culpability, Chris.
Okay.
It's the body who is culpable, not the individuals.
Lauren, just going forward, this committee has already appointed 4 subcommittees to look as a working group. And so it's my understanding now that we would have to put, I don't know, the notice of an agenda of those subcommittee meetings.
That's
maybe
what I
as the
would
minutes
advise.
of this meeting. So since we can't really, no subcommittee has met, we'd have to sort of put those agendas on the minutes of this meeting or contact, our friends to put it on. And if we had that subcommittee meeting, those are open to the public then.
Yes.
And do we have to keep a written record for 30 days or something? Or we don't have a recording of that. I mean, I think.
So what you're talking about is the new law, which requires that there is public bodies. When does this body end? Sorry.
We have to have a
supposed.
final report to the legislature by December 15th.
Okay.
And
So
I think we dissolve after that.
Okay. So you do not have to record and post your meetings currently. The law requires that of state public bodies, which I would conservatively advise you to consider yourselves that, since you were created by the legislature, to post and to record and post the meetings on a website starting in January 1st of 2025. And those recordings will be required to be posted for 30 days after the approval of the minutes. So you don't really have to worry that much about this, but I'm just going to tell you, if you have meeting A and then you have unapproved minutes after meeting A, you have meeting B, the recording should be up in between those meetings. You approve at meeting B, you approve the minutes, then you should still have the recording up for 30 days after meeting B, and then the recording can come down. And that just reflects the state of the law, that the minutes are the official record of the meeting. So bodies will be able to destroy the recording 30 days after the minutes are approved. But the intent of the legislature, the discussion was the recording gives someone who was not able to go to the meeting a better understanding than unofficial minutes might, or a member of the body who was unable to go might need access to the recording. And then there's time for someone to say, I disagree with what you put in your unofficial minutes during the approval process. And then someone can use that recording for 30 days to prepare for the next meeting. It was to protect the public, ultimately, to have full access to what's happening in meetings, but not to require state bodies. Importantly, this only applies to state bodies, not local bodies to bear the burden of all of those storage costs.
Just FYI, I am using my personal YouTube site to host this recording, and then I will be posting the minutes on the Town of Vernon's front page forum page. Would that satisfy the open meeting law requirements? Because it's being posted somewhere.
Yeah. Yes, well, first of all, you don't have the requirement. But second of all, so just baseline, you don't have to record your meetings. You don't have to post your meetings. I just want to make that clear. You can choose to do so.
Okay.
If you choose to do so, putting them in YouTube is fine. You just would want to make sure that the agreement of the hoster understands the requirements that this body sets out. And again, because you're not required to, I don't think there's restrictions on how you do it.
Okay.
But you may want to put in your minutes as a standing item how to find the recordings so that people know how to find them, because I would never think to look in either of the places that you just named for the recordings of these meetings. So
understandable. I mean, Vernon isn't Paris. I do get that.
yeah.
Well,
So, just think.
Do you have a recommendation if we opt to do the recording of where they would sit?
Well, I know a lot of people are using YouTube, and but my recommendation, which doesn't apply here, that's why I sort of paused and had to think through what I was going to say. I'm not sure if you guys saw me trying to think, but I think putting them on YouTube is good, and I think putting them on an official page linked to one of you is also okay, but probably not required, as long as in the minutes, someone knows, okay, I need to go to this YouTube to find them.
Okay.
It's fine. How it's currently happening is totally okay, permissible by the law, but and not required. Let me just say it's not required, 10 more times. You don't have to record your meetings. You don't have to post your meetings because because the law goes into effect January 1st.
So it sounds like this might be a couple of topics this committee could vote to either do or not do.
Yeah. It might be useful for you to record the meetings so that you have a record, or if someone can't come. And in that case, it would be a public record if somebody asked for it. And in that light, posting it on YouTube so it's available so nobody says you're hiding it or they don't know that it exists or that you have to respond to them, I think is a prudent way to go. You guys are dealing with a really weighty topic. So I think the more you're transparent about it and open about it, the better. So I think my recommendation would be, if you were asking my opinion, I would say record them and put them in YouTube and post how the public can find them.
Correct.
Is it possible for us to post and would we post our minutes in the same place that we're noticing meetings? So on the Department of Library. Okay.
Yes. That's, I believe, designed for that purpose, Grace.
Oh, that makes sense.
Anybody else have any other questions for Ms. Hibbert?
Lauren, at the end of the advisory opinion from the AG's office, there were some suggestions about potentially trying to get some state support to comply. Do you have any thoughts on whether that's doable or how we might go about that if we decide that that's prudent?
Well, it's interesting to me that the Department of Tax is not part of your working group. I don't know the history of that. And I think the Department of Libraries is a really concrete way to get help. I don't really have any strong suggestions for you outside of that. What I will say is that I do think this is an area that needs to be clarified in the law. And I do think that legislators and legislative council need to understand when they create a working group without a state partner. While the Secretary of State's office does not have the ability to monitor all the working groups that are created, this is something that making open meeting law more express, I think would help around legislative working groups. So that is something that I don't know if there will be a modification to open meeting this legislative session, but this is going to be something that needs to be discussed. And I do intend to talk with legislative council about it because it puts this body in a very difficult position. And if you had a state partner, this would be a lot simpler for a whole variety of reasons. We have a working group. Tim's on it on open meeting law, and we have a web page on the working group. We're going to have the agenda there. We're going to have the minutes there. We've been asked to record. We need to make a decision on whether or not we're going to do that because we're not required, but we could put our recordings there. It's just simpler. And I think this is sort of an anomaly, but also an unforeseen, because it's an anomaly, an unforeseen ripple effect.
Lauren, I'd be happy to help you in that effort because while I think we'll be able to get some work done with this group, we've got some decisions to make. I also feel a bit paralyzed.
Yeah.
Because I want to do the right thing. I don't want to make a mistake with the, compliance, but this is really not our field.
Right.
And I feel like it could be pretty easy to make a mistake. And so I feel a bit paralyzed and uneasy. That's why, to some extent, I asked the question of what's our liability, if any. And I feel like we may be able to do some things, but part of it may be to go back to the legislature and say, politely, you kind of screwed us because we didn't have the support we needed to comply with this particular piece. So if you do go in at some point to the legislature in 25 and have this discussion, I'll be happy to support you in that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, I think I hear what you're saying and I honor it. And I think the biggest place where you will be impacted is your lack of ability to send 15 emails about a topic and iron out how you're going to approach something in email. And that is not an insignificant impact. I don't want to minimize that. Other than that, I think you're going to be able to comply fairly well in a way that folks will understand that you're trying to do so. And, every government public body has to follow this and manages, albeit I could make a joke about government moving really slow, does do it. So, or tries to do it as best they can. So, I think the biggest thing is it just probably shouldn't happen again. And that's what we need to make clear to the legislature, both in the creation of the committees, but also the law could be a lot clearer than it is currently.
Is
and
there
we can do a better job of that.
We don't have a state partner?
I'm sorry, what? I didn't hear you.
Is there a reason that we don't or can't have a state partner?
So I wasn't part of the legislative discussion about this topic at all. So I don't know how you were created or even frankly why you were created. I'm sorry, but I know you're important.
Wow.
I know that sounds really cold.
Yeah.
But my guess, I don't know why. I could guess, but that would violate a lot. So
there are no legislators involved because essentially my understanding was that adding legislators to the study committee would have required appropriations to be involved. And it was just a matter of timing and trying to get the legislation through. And the reason that we exist is because some legislative proposals in the bill as introduced, there wasn't a lot of consensus among stakeholders. And so the legislative committees that the bill went through thought it was best to put those into a study committee for there to be more consideration and discussion around those topics. And then, the legislature would, based on the recommendations, decide on policy on those particular topics. Yes.
Lauren, in the statute itself, it says that the working group will be composed of the following people or following entities. And it doesn't name a state entity. So we're sort of down to that. And so that's why, it's because the statute says so.
That's right. I mean, you don't have a state partner in the language establishing this working group. But I do think you can use the Department of Libraries, which you're doing, which is great. And I do think you could seek a state partner. I don't know who that state partner would be appropriately. But I don't know that you have to have a state partner to do your work or to comply with the open meeting law, because you're using the Department of Libraries as a centralized place to post your minutes and agendas. So I think that's great. And that meets the requirement. And on your personal organization sites, you could point to that, which would be great. Not required, but great. And you're going to make access to the public available, which is good. So people can join without having to ask for a link. That would be great. And you'll be mindful about the communications that you have in email. So I think you can do it. I'm here to say I think you can do it. But yes, it would be easier if you had a state partner. And that's the piece that from the Secretary of State's office, you have a commitment from us that when this law is reopened, we're going to be asking about this. But even in the short term, I'm going to talk to Legislative Council about this so that these working groups are not created without this impact being known, the open meeting law impact, because it does have a different impact when there's not a state partner in the group, whether it's a legislator or not. There's lots of working groups that don't have legislators for the exact reason that Grace articulated, the appropriation. But this is the first one I've seen without a state partner. And even for those that do have state partners, I'm not sure that they've always been operating as open meetings. So I just think even with state partners, that there needs to be some clarity in the law.
But as somebody who's had his hand slapped before on an open meeting law question, public meeting question, I didn't die. Okay, it was just, you did it wrong, don't do it again. And I said, fine. So, I would not put too much worry into what if we make a mistake? People make mistakes. In fact, the next police chief told me that's why pencils have erasers. Okay, so I think we're going to get through this. There may be a few bumps, but we'll be fine. Any other questions for Ms. Hibbert? Seeing none in my moderator role, I would say thank you for your time and your generosity. And I will see you, no doubt, at either the election seminar tomorrow or at the VMCTA annual meeting on Wednesday and Thursday in Montpelier. So thank you again.
I'm looking forward to it. And if you folks have more questions, please send them my way. I'm happy to answer them or do my best to answer them. And good luck.
Thank you.
Good night,
Thanks, Lauren.
everyone.
Okay, with that portion of our meeting taken care of, I think really the next thing that we would need to do is look at scheduling dates, and I've written down who's doing what when. Numbers 1, 3, and 5. 1 being taxes and charges of. Oh, excuse me. I did that over wrong section here. Of course, that's okay. 1 being whether the state should change the law to allow a delinquent taxpayer whose property is transferred by a tax collector's deed or tax lien foreclosure to recoup all or part of the equity. 3 is whether the state should require a minimum amount of tax debt before a sale could be initiated. And 5 is Well, five is five. Okay. Um, looks like Chris, Grace, and Kevin are on that working group.
I had
Cool.
Bruce and Ryan also on that in my notes. Are my
Okay,
notes
good.
incorrect?
Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, that's what I wrote down.
All right. So my suggestion would be for all of you to email one another for the purpose of setting a meeting, which is allowed under the open meeting law. You can schedule meetings without going over the top and going crazy. 4 and 6 looks like it has Grace, Chris, and Bruce. And number
Again,
2,
I have for 4 and 6. Maybe it was my note taking, but for 4 and 6, I have Jim Knapp, Grace, Linda, Chris, and me.
and Kevin. Okay. Well, that'll be fine.
Did anyone send those out? I was really tied up with the VALA conference, so I wasn't as passionate about email.
I will send this out after the meeting is done as part of our minutes, and we'll get to you. But again, the balance of my week is sunk into a conference. So under open meeting law, I do have 5 calendar days to do it. So that'll be my personal deadline. Let's see here else. Number 2 looks like it's myself, Ryan, and Linda, unless there's anybody else there. And under number 7, it's myself, Jim, and George. So I would suggest that we all email the rest of our group and figure out when our meetings are going to be. And once those meetings are set, we would get a Zoom scheduled and put the subcommittee up on the Department of Library's website. And does that sound reasonable? Okay, good. The other questions are, does anyone have objections to the committee furthering or further committee meetings being put on YouTube after being recorded? Sounds good. And given what we've heard from Lauren Hibbert, I will continue to take notes and put minutes and meeting announcements on the Department of the Library's website. And any of you who have scheduled subcommittee meetings, if you could pass the announcements on to me, and we'll set those up on the Library Department website as well. Do we have anything else at this point other than mass emailing of each other trying to figure out when the heck we're going to meet?
I wonder, Tim, if it might make sense for the subcommittees to appoint a minute taker, since there are specific things that need to be taken down for minutes, just so that we have that continuity.
Correct. So shall we do that now? Or shall they do that when they get together and meet?
I vote for that, actually. That makes
What's that again, Linda?
I would say when we're meeting with our subs, that
Yeah.
would make those, I hate to use the word decision.
Well, I think some basic organization should be allowed as part of the first subcommittee meeting. It would make the most sense and might make it easier on everybody here.
And if I understand correctly, we have to, after any of our meetings, we post unapproved minutes, and then I would assume at the beginning of the next agenda, we approve.
Your first item would be minutes approval, and then going on to the rest of your committee meeting.
So there are minutes from our first meeting?
They look like this, which is either a map of the Ural Mountains or something that is my own personal hand scratchings.
The day after the meeting, I sent out minutes.
Yeah, I
You
thought
all, some of you responded to them. I just sent them to you again.
bless you.
My goodness, thank you, Jim. In fact, let's gotta find them.
Nice.
Oh, look, here it is. Wow,
Nice job.
looks good. I think under the circumstances, because we all are victims of circumstance in this particular thing. If you have seen the minutes yet, I would love to hear a motion approving those minutes that look quite nice, Jim. Thank you.
I'll move that.
We hear a second.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Looks good. It's unanimous. So that's how easy it is to approve minutes. So let's see here, Jim. Okay, Linda made the motion. And I think Jim seconded it.
I seconded it, Ryan.
Oh, Ryan
Ryan.
seconded it. Thank you, Ryan.
Mhm.
All right. Do we have anything else to come before this august body today? Seeing none, email each other, knock yourselves out. I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All
Second.
those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you so much. We're going to
Tim.
get through this. Thank you for your efforts. Okay? Have a great day.
Thank you.
You, everyone.